welcome. On behalf of ET Studios, ETHRWorld and Coursera welcome you to this discussion on generative AI ushering in a new era of personalized and interactive learning experience at scale. So what is this discussion all about? As enterprises scale up, skilling is in the reckoning, learning leaders across the board are mulling what to do next. With the advent of Gen AI, this has unleashed a world of possibilities as well as the Pandora's box. So what can generative AI do to enhance learning outcomes? What are learning leaders thinking across the board? Where are we headed next? What is the roadmap for learning as an employee and a learning leader experience overall? Come, let us understand more insights. We have with us an insightful panel awaiting us to understand more. Let me introduce the panel quickly without further ado. We have with us, right to my left, Vikram Sharma, who's the VP HR at Strides. Welcome, Vikram. We have Dallas Krishnan, who's the MD, Coursera Enterprise India and ANZ. Welcome, Dallas. We have Ritesh Ranjan, who is the SVP Global Learning and Talent Management at Emirates. Welcome. We have Vishnu Iruvanti, who's the Head of Human Resources at Clear. And last but not the least, we have Mohan Sitaram, the CHRO at Shadowfax. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us. I have like an interesting opening question for all of you, and let's move right into it. I'll move in no particular order, so I will start with Ritesh. Ritesh, how do you think learning has really evolved in the last few years? And the business environment, hybrid models, so much of change that has really happened. How have you really seen this shift? And what are you as a learning leader thinking of? All yours.
Sure. I think what I've seen, traditionally, when we looked at learning, I think predominantly it was about classroom learning, and I myself, have been a big believer in that. And e-learning was there to sort of supplement what you were doing from a classroom learning perspective, right? Across the board, be it technical, leadership, behavioral. But I think what the pandemic forced us to do was to, have our programs more blended and have it primarily in the e-learning mode, and therefore the e-learning adoption sort of really started to go up. And that's one change that we saw. And in all our programs, we had to have a model where you have some virtual instructor-led learning, and then some self-paced, and then some bite-sized learning to keep the engagement going. And that's been a big shift from in-person to a more blended sort of a model that we've seen. And across the board, it doesn't matter what kind of learning we're talking about. So that to me has been the biggest change that I've seen.
Sure, thank you for that. Vishnu, I'll move this to you. So where are the shifts that you've seen with changing business environments, skilling priorities? So there's the eternal dilemma. So what have you really observed?
So I think I'll break that into two parts. In the pre-pandemic era, as Mohan rightly pointed out, Ranjan rightly pointed out, in terms of how the classroom training has evolved into a more digital consumption, and how the entire digital era has been powered by latest generative AI instruments which power learning on the go. Right? Today, the entire concept of classroom training is almost out of the window, and the continuous training has evolved, and more organizations are using the power of generative AI to generate content on the go. And the content itself has taken a complete 360 turn in terms of how we consume it and how we are using it as well, right? There is the native content which is required for doing a particular low-end job is completely automated, and the advanced content, there are multiple features available right now, or multiple companies provide this advanced data for learning purpose, and the learning itself now people are adapting on a day-to-day basis, right? And to give you an example, at Clear, we were earlier forced to do a lot more in-house training for especially sales and the CRM folks, right, and CSM folks. So they, to understand the product dimensionality, the usage of products, and the value proposition what we want to create to our customers. that entire consumption is gone online right now, right? So, and not only it is gone online, it is readily available on any of the device, whatever they want to. So, pitching it for the customer, pitching it at on go has become far more easier. Thereby, the entire shift in this learning has been a complete 360. So that's what we are experiencing, and this is a era which all of us are forced to adopt, and the adoption rate at which we used to consume the change, right, has gone up tenfolds as well. So it's interesting times. We'll see how it heads.
Absolutely. So bringing in a different perspective altogether, Vikram. Strides, of course, is also a slightly different industry, and so where do you see this evolution? I'm sure you have a different thought process around how learning has really shaped up. What are the key shifts you observed?
Yeah, I'll give a particular example from my industry, pharma industry, and how we leveraged this technology, call it Industry 4.0, and now almost 5.0 is also there. So this AR and VR technology, we have done a proof of concept and we are about to implement this in lieu of a very monotonous and a very lengthy SOPs, the standing operating procedures. And since most of our markets are all the regulated markets, and the regulators like FDA, MHRA, etc. So they have these guidelines that even the trained operators work on the various processes. So there are very lengthy SOPs, and there are, of course, technical digital trainings that we impart. But again, that becomes a very monotonous, and that's all in English, even if it's in a vernacular medium. So what we did was we leveraged AR VR technology. We converted a particular SOP, maybe cleaning validation, or the batch cleaning after one drug is taken and the other. So there are various SOPs on the processes. We converted into a wearable kind of this thing. And this has really kind of shifted. So we have done the proof of concept on certain operators, and they're liking it. You wear it, and the entire thing is captured what they would have otherwise gone through a PC or a laptop and spent a couple of hours to it. Now they can really see that whole this thing. So what I'm saying is, in our kind of industry, we saw that one of the other pharma industries in Hyderabad had done it. So we did this, and we are that way leveraging this new tools of technology. That is one. But to continue, other than the pharma, what I also feel is that the advances in technology, AI, and now generative AI, they are bringing in more democratization of the learning process itself. Learning, when you, Ritesh, started, the classroom learning, so it was a privilege of the few. And now, if internet is there, far-flung places, not just in India but other developing countries, and ably assisted by players like Coursera, it is reaching to the far-flung areas. So it is not just the reserve of the privileged few. Everybody has access to education and learning, and that is, I feel, the biggest advantage I see of this whole evolution of technology. That's
Absolutely. Sure. Let me move this to Mohan at this point. Mohan, key shifts in an organization such as yours. We got to hear different industries, flavors here. What's your take on this?
Well, the learning was a straitjacket. We were trying to fit everyone into that straitjacket, and that was a fundamental flaw. People are at different competencies, they are at different stages, they have different learning styles, and they have different time slots that they would want to learn. And we were force fitting that this hour to this hour and this day, and this is the program, and people never followed that. Then we intelligent people came out saying that a single digit efficiency is good efficiency. If there is a 9% movement, that is great. And then we started writing models of 9-hole pilferage model of training. It's only so much people will learn, and all that is out of the window. Now there is no straitjacket. People learn what they want to learn. People learn when they want to learn. and people customize to the competence level they want thanks to the technology. So what AI has done is that it adjusts itself to my competence and what I want to learn. That is a radical shift, and that has changed the whole learning process. And all the models, the 9-hole model which we were talking about, is not relevant anymore, and all that has become obsolete.
Sure. Dallas, calling you in at this point of time, you've heard, what some of our learning leaders have said. What are the key shifts you think have to be addressed, and how are these learning priorities which have shifted resulted in either utilization or underutilization of AI? So how can Gen AI in particular enhance learning outcomes, and what are the ways in which it can be customized to personalize and create a more interactive learning experience for the user as well as the disseminator?
Sure. Let me start by saying I think Mohan actually partially answered this question, but I'll contextualize in the context of the overall flow. But let me start with the first big shift that where in the context of work and learning was earlier either an optional item or it was something that people were forced to do, right? But learning has now become an integral part of work. So in that context, there is, I think, Heather McGowan who speaks about the future of work being learning, right? Now, why is it so? You can clearly see that if you think of the paradigm shifts that is happening today across industries, technologies, multiple sets of technologies, AI is one of them, but there are many other technologies that are coming and getting integrated into various industries and hence changing the nature of work. So there is a constant need for the worker or the employee to change and learn new things, right? And the pace at which this change is happening is much faster than earlier before. Just to give a simple context, a telephone, it hit about 100 million subscribers and it took, take a guess, 90 years, right? And Gen AI, when ChatGPT came out sometime in December, and it took only 3 months to 800 million learners, right? Now that's the pace at which technology is getting adopted, and that's not going to change. It's only going to accelerate further. So fundamentally, there's one big shift, that is learning has to become integral to the work of every employee, right? Then to Mohan's point, when you have to make it integral to an employee, how do you make it in such a way that the learner feels that he needs to learn more, right? So one of the first things that we see companies doing and customers doing is role-based, skill-based learning, right? So they go towards the context of, instead of saying catalog and okay, here is what you learn, which is what the open learning concept was, people are moving to more the context of skills-first learning, where organizations have mapped roles, competencies, and within competencies levels, right? And then comes the power of technology, right? Like you mentioned, technology is a huge enabler, and AI is one of the big powerful ones, which now enables us to bring to the context of every learner to be treated individually, right? And I'll take an analogy from the marketing world. We normally say that, if the smallest marketing segment is one, which is me, the individual, and if the marketing to me feels like service, it is no longer marketing anymore, right? It feels like service. Very similarly, in the context of learning, if I get to learn in the context of who I am, what I know, and what I need to know, if I have that clarity, and then it tells me what I should learn and what is the specific set of courses that will be done, instead of giving everybody one set of, either put everybody in a classroom and one instructor, one mechanism of learning, you customize it to that individual depending on the skills they are, right? So that's the place where AI and technology is playing a huge play. Most platforms like us, Coursera and the other platforms, are essentially using this power of technology and trying to make learning experiences more engaging, learning context to be more personalized, and then of course to be delivered at scale, because that's the most important thing, because the scale at which technology is getting adopted you can't do a 25 people training anymore and be happy with it. You probably have to think of the entire workforce as somebody who need to enable. So those are the few things that we see, especially AI technology enabling.
Sure. Absolutely. So, Vishnu, taking off from what Dallas just said, how are you looking at learning at scale? You know, particularly, what is the kind of scale that is expected at CLEAR? And B, how are you creating, leveraging, or looking at leveraging? How are you envisaging a roadmap for using AI and Gen AI for creating personalized learning experiences, simulations, gamifications, and more interactive learning content? All yours.
I agree with what he's saying as an extension of the same thought process, right? The role-based training, right, has gone much more deeper. As I said in my previous comment as well, what has happened is the learning has become far more personalized. It is also at your own will and time, and also it is feeding into as and when you are learning, right? It is also learning by itself in terms of what Mohan just said, the pace at which I want to learn and to customize to my own needs, right? I might be faster or I might be slightly behind schedule, etc. So how these all online tools and the courses have been designed is that they allow you to go through that motion as per the speed at which you want to go through, right? It is no longer a box of people sitting inside a classroom and then you're boxed into that and then there is one-to-many communication, right? There is broad-based in terms of content available, which is widespread content and also much more zoomed in to a particular needs of the person. Now, I'll take the same example of marketing, right? Today, what used to take us 20 days to produce a quality of content to cater to a particular customer needs or a demographic needs, right, has been reduced to 8 hours of work, thanks to the kind of quality of content available and also the kind of imagery available, right, today. Because with the invent of AI or generative AI, right, these machines are self-learning and they also understand what your needs are. So next time when you are revisiting the content, it auto corrects itself so that you don't have to go through that Brownian motion again to get it to correct stage at which you want. So coming back to the training program, right? So there has been a big shift in terms of how managerial effectiveness have to be improved across the organization. And this requires, as we all know, there are multiple threads and needles what we need to pull through, right? So there is a significant effort in terms of generating of the roles and responsibility, level descriptors, and the goal setting exercise in terms of feeding in information for the manager to make it easier for them so that the learning is self-based and not a classroom based, and trying to give them that customization what is required for them for their particular role or department or a particular person, right? So that with that customization and powered with other capabilities and qualities what they need to build on and competencies what they need to develop on. So there has been a continuous effort from our end to how to make a content which is consumable on any device, consumable at their pace, at their will, and also building in tools which will allow us on timely assessments and schedules, etc., so that we meet our timeline with an objective that we are able to improve the performance and productivity of the overall organization. We have been slightly successful in some areas are still work in progress, but with the generative AI, right, the compression in time has gone significantly high, and the quality of information available and the quality of content available has gone 10x, and the costs have come down significantly, which is a huge benefit to the business, right? In terms of like we can deploy those costs into areas where probably it needs more attention and use it for business growth.
Sure. Ritesh, if I were to ask you a similar question, so how are you creating an environment of self-paced learning? If so, where are your success stories and what exactly are you doing to leverage AI to enhance this quotient?
Right. So at eMeds, one of the things that we've tried to do is like Dulce was mentioning, having a skill-based journey carved out. So when I log in as an engineer or as a developer, as a QA person, I can first sort of figure out what my skills are again and where I am against the benchmark. And once I have that, then it sort of suggests here's a journey that could make sense for you, and then you sort of go on that journey, because otherwise what happens is the biggest challenge with self-paced learning is you log in, you search for a course, and there are 100 courses that show up. Now, which one do you need to take? I think so. That's what we've tried to solve with this by having personalized journey, and that has helped a lot. And we see adoption sort of go up significantly. So we launched our new platform in October. Till December, the traction was not that great, but by January, we started to see a huge uptick. The other thing, which is a bit contrarian from what Vishnu was saying earlier, I still believe that your virtual instructor-led learning and a classroom learning still plays a role, and you have to really blend it into the journey, because I think the self-paced is good, but how do you make sure that if there are 150 engineers who have to learn a particular skill, they are learning at the same time, and actually you are having a bit of discipline there as well. So those specific classroom or virtual classroom learning helps everybody to sort of come onto the same page, and then peer learning starts to happen. And then what Vikram was saying earlier, right, democratization, not just in terms of the way the content is available to everybody, but also in terms of user generated content. And that's what we are seeing here, where people are saying that, hey, I have content on UX and UI, I have content that I've developed on AI, which sort of talks about how AI has evolved. And we're taking that content from our engineers and we are putting it about to the platform, because so democratization has really happened. So that's the other thing that we've seen. I think where we need platforms to go from here, Dulce, with platforms like Coursera or Skillsoft, is go beyond the journey that I was talking about, which is very helpful. But I would still have to go through a 28-hour journey, right? Instead of that, if I'm working and I'm stuck somewhere, I get onto the platform and I type a question like on any generative AI platform, and it throws answers from 5 different modules and says, here are things that I have found, and now if you want to learn more, of course you can go and do these 5 courses. I think that's where we have to go. That would be the next.
Very interesting. You just outlined the 3 models, self-paced, classroom, aided learning, as well as democratized learning. I think that's the way the world, all the 3 models will exist and coexist very well, in fact, I think in different permutations and combinations. I'll move this to Mohan. Mohan, how do you think, enhanced employee, learning tools or, techniques and automation, of course, coming into the picture can actually enhance employee experience and retention, motivation, morale in a learning context? How do you think these really pan out, and do you have any specific use case to envisage or talk about?
Sure. There are 2 stages. One is as is, another is to be, and everyone understands this, right? And there is clear gap from as is to be, and that is the journey he was talking about. So what is that we are trying to do? Either we are trying to be more efficient or we are trying to be more productive, which we do not have an option but to get there. So what happens if the gap is that of knowledge, learning, Coursera lends itself and you figure out how to do it. If the gap is of the talent, Vishnu was talking about marketing content, there are no content creators, there are no good content creators. So someone like Jasper or a ChatGPT would pitch in there and give you content. So it has become, if at all I can make the statement, an irrelevant conversation to say that I don't have talent. You don't need talent today. There are tools which have substituted some aspect. I'm not saying that I'm not moving into that conversation of machine taking over the man, but I'm clearly calling out the talent gap has drastically come down because of the technology pitching in. Jasper gives you all possible content you need for marketing. Coursera gives you every learning you want to do in whatever competence level. So the game is all about defining that North Star, to say that this is where we are, This is where we got to be, and this is the journey, and this is the gap, and technology lends it. And answering your last question, slightly differ. I do not believe in any more training sessions. We don't put people in the room, because the onus of learning is not on the organization in my mind. It is on each one of us. We got to learn because we got to be surviving in this world. So we have to learn. We do not have an option. So what has been done is that I've broken the training team into pieces, and they sit on the floors. And when the hand goes up that I need some help, the guy goes there to help him. It is not that I have a training calendar wherein you need to sit and learn anymore. All of them have access to online learnings, be it LinkedIn, be it Coursera, whatever, depending on the role they are in. And there are people who are ambassadors who would nudge you to learn, but learning is on them. It is not on the organization. That is the shift I'm talking.
Sure, that's a very key shift where I think the DIY model really now is kicked, self-paced as we call it, where we say, okay, it's up to you, no compulsion, your self-growth is in your hands, right? Empowering the employee to a large extent. Vikram, how does this work for you? How does this pan out for you? What is the model that works best, and how do you think it really enhances employee experience, motivation? What is it that really clicks and resonates?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example what Strides Pharma has embarked upon for this year for the goal setting, right? And we earmark 20% of the 100% will be only on the learning and development agenda. So out of this 20%, of course, there is 8% on technical, 8% on behavioral, which is linked to the competencies of the various levels of the organization, and 4% is the mandatory training, code of conduct, etc. Now, to ensure that employees are engaged and they have a better experience, that they embark on this learning journey, what we have done is we have our dashboards and analytics coming to the people managers from the LMS platform, right? So we do not want that training which are assigned to an individual, they are just a tick box item to be done at the end of the year during January, February, and that I have achieved my 20% of the goal before the assessment. So we are ensuring that month on month there are some kind of conversations happening between the employee and the people manager that, hey, you needed to do this much hours of training, right? How much you have done. So just like you have, Mohan, put your training people on the shop floor. So similarly, what we have done is in pharma, Strides Pharma Science, is that our HR business partners in R&D, in manufacturing, in corporate, they are connected to the line managers and functional heads, right? They provide the dashboards monthly, and the people managers have access to the LMS platform, and that enables them that the onus on the learning, very rightly said by all my three panelists, is the fact that it's a self-paced learning. We have a blended learning. It's a mix of classroom and all, but everything is now online on the platform, the learning management system platform. So that, and every employee has an access. So there are emails generated wherein an employee feels that this training I had subscribed to and I need to do it. So this way, in a very brick and mortar kind of industry, we are ensuring that each employee gets a very lovely experience in this whole learning and development journey. And this LMS works on all the technologies, which I think Dallas would know it better, but I feel it would be having all the AI, ML, etc., deep learning. But this technology is itself enabling that employee experience, employee are feeling very engaged. And yes, you very rightly said, the onus we have shifted back to the employee. It's not like training calendars still there, they're uploaded there. But we are encouraging our employees to go take that, because 20% of your weightage and variable pay is linked to that. So that's how currently this year we are doing in Strides.
Sure, interesting. So I'll stay with you now that you brought up the dashboard and the analytics part of it. So now that there is a clear shift, as we see among organizations to really look at self-paced learning and saying, okay, we are empowering you and so on and so forth. How do you tie it back to business outcomes? So what are the specific metrics that we can be linked to learning and the business? So any specific take on that, Vikram?
Yeah, so as I mentioned to you, out of this 20%, the 8% is purely technical trainings. So what we had done was before the start of this financial year itself, we had culled trainings for manufacturing specific, engineering specific, quality specific, from a manufacturing perspective I'm saying, and same for R&D and supply chain, etc. So these were vetted by the concerned CXOs, which have been now uploaded. So when an employee has to compulsorily go through the technical trainings as well, so overall, this is directly linked to the organization. I can give some examples. For example, good documentation practices is one example in quality, which employees have to be very proficient about, right? Because when the regulators come for inspection, they go through the documentation. That's one example. But I can take of engineering, I can take of manufacturing. So there are very, very specific trainings which have a very direct impact on the organizational development, and not just the functional ones. Even the behavioral ones are directly linked to the competencies for the junior management, for middle management, and top management. So for example, at the senior level, if thought leadership and people manager, people champion, or decision making, these are the core competencies at that level. So there are trainings linked to these. And we want these senior leaders to be seen as role models, because people down below look up to them. So that also has an impact on your engagement, the earlier question we were talking of. So all of this is translating into organizational effectiveness.
Absolutely. Ritesh, if I have to move this to you, what are the specific ways? Now, we are looking at role-based training, role-based roadmaps. We are looking at a pathway that will actually not just enhance employee experience, but will give an employee a sense of where he would be, say, 3 years down the line, or whatever the timeline that an organization chooses. So how are you directly linking it to specific business outcomes? What are the metrics that you apply, and what's working for you? Are you customizing or keeping it standard?
That's a very good question. I think any program that we sort of offer, and it's a cliche, you'll hear people say you begin with the end in mind, but it's difficult to do. So, but what we still do is that, okay, what outcomes are we trying to hit, right? So if with leadership development, it's about creating an environment where people are able to give their best. So how can we train our managers around that, right? So that was the idea. So we look at things like, okay, where do we want the employee engagement scores to move from X to Y? Where do we want the retention to move, again, from X to Y? So we sort of, once we've defined that, then sort of the program flows from that. And then, you at the end you measure. And if you do a good job, like we did with our first line manager program, and we were able to see that there was a 10 percentage point reduction in attrition. We saw that capability was improving. We also saw the engagement scores increase, right? And we applied for a Brandon Hall Award, we won it, and that was great, because not only were we able to show business impact, we were also able to say that we are benchmarking against the industry, and we are one of the best there. So that's an example that I would take. The other thing I think you had asked was, would you have you changed or have you kept your metrics the same? I think where we have made a big change is, instead of measuring hours and saying, okay, every employee has to put in 40 hours of learning, we are talking more about what is it that people would need to learn based on where they are. And once they learn, what will happen? So two things that we've been able to do. One is change that, and today the focus is a lot on emerging technologies, like for example, generative AI. We've developed our own platform called ePulse AI, aimed at healthcare providers in the US. So we want everybody to be trained on Gen AI, right? So that's something that we're focusing on, and the focus is on course rather than the number of hours. And then what we've also done is tie that back to their growth by saying, here's the job rotation platform, and after you've developed a particular skill, you go in and then look for jobs which are tied to that. And that way you can see growth within the organization. It's still early days with the job rotation one, but hopefully over the next 12 to 18 months, we'll have a robust process around it.
Great insights. Mohan, if I were to move the question to you, how do you really see learning as a direct function of business outcomes and vice versa? What's your story here?
It's a fantastic question, at the same time very tough to respond. I tell you, I agree with you 100%. Learning, engagement, or any of these initiatives are just a conduit. They are conduit for some operational metrics or some financial metrics. So, I was telling you that it's a tough question to answer because, as he aptly puts it, it's super hard to connect. So, what you hold an organization responsible is for what is that we need to accomplish in this year or the year to come, right? You are trying to build a profitable high growth organization. Are you building one? If the financials are not moving, then you get into operational metrics. If the operational matrices are not moving, you move down to the talent. If the talent assessment is a challenge, you move down to learning. That is the way it goes. But if everything is going great, you're not thinking anything beyond celebrating that it's going well. I like exactly what he says, but what actually happens is that when you take an initiative, like the first line manager, then obviously you want to connect it to how happy the people are under him. And all cliched matrices will flow out. My engagement score has gone up, my attrition has come down, my infant mortality has come down, blah, 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 blah. So if there is a specific intervention, you track it to the matrices. But if not, as an organization, you will look at, all these are conduits. Are we achieving where we want to be?
Sure. Well said. All these are conduits, but are we achieving where we really want to be? That's well said. So, Vishnu, if I have to move this to you, how are you really looking at tying learning to business outcomes? What are your specific metrics? And are you also looking at a shift in the way you're reviewing it? Because there's a shift in the way learning itself is being viewed at, right? So, all yours.
It's tough to answer after both the gentlemen concluded whatever they had said, right? I think I'll try and add few points to that. As Mohan said and Ranjan said, right, the entire business outcomes are invariably it is tied into the learning because it is linked directly to the productivity of every employee, right? And if you look at how we can improve them, first, are we being very transparent about it in terms of what are the matrices which matter to the company and are we publishing that? As I said, the first step towards managerial development program is that we started publishing managerial scores. Then we started publishing their attrition scores, productivity scores, and how happy the employee pulse is, right, in their divisions. With the assumption, underlined assumption, that if all these scores go up, then your productivity automatically goes up, right? As Mohan said, if all are green, then hopefully we should celebrate, but the more important thing is that how do I sustain it, right? And with that said, right, because the changing trends are so fast, right, there might be no mistake of the organization or no mistake of the employee itself because the entire surroundings in the atmosphere has changed. So you have to adapt to that. And then the matrices change and the way you look at learning also changes. As I said this before, but I'll repeat, the entire power of today's technology has enabled us to make it faster, make it real time, make it customized, make it cost effective, and make it very impactful. Impactful because it is helping me on my job. Unlike, I did a training 6 months back and I don't remember what exactly it says. And now I need it, right, in this moment. And how do I get access to that? Thanks to online courses available real time on any device anywhere, is able to give me that nudge, give me that additional advantage, right, to cross over that threshold and win that customer or win that deal or win that employee, right, at any given point of time. Coming back to matrices, there are clear metrics as we all discussed, right, like but how does it link to productivity, right, is the moat question what we all need to answer. And then you are perennially dissatisfied even if you achieve the number whatever you quoted, right. So as long as this is continuous exercise, we are all good.
As they say, discontent is the mother of all ambition, right. So Dallas, your commentary, you've heard, what industry leaders had to say about the eternal question between productivity and learning outcomes. So some thought from your end as well, all yours.
So I think there are two parts here. One is matrices, another is impact, right? And they're interrelated, but they may not be directly interjected to each other, right? In the context of learning metrics, we know there are the classical metrics like learning hours per employee, etc., right? So that remains. People still take a look at that data because it's still some raw data to know what is the activity level. So fundamentally, think of it like an activity metric in the context of learning, what's happening in the organization. That gives you that pulse, right? You may not say, oh, activity is equal to outcome. Yeah, of course, not necessary, right? But at least you know there is something that's happening. So what the digital platforms and as e-learning has picked up is the ability to now track the learning in the context of what type of learning has happened, right? Otherwise, think of it like if I went to the classroom, my hours would have been logged, but there would be no way for me to know of the 25 people who learned what at what level of skill. In a platform like ours, what we do is that it allows us to measure the learning itself, right, in the context of there are assessments and stuff like that, and then there is a skill score that we develop. So every content that we publish in Coursera is tagged to a skill, and skills is what, when we spoke of role-based learning, skills is what you attach to a role, right? So what we can actually do is that we can start tracking on a particular role, what is the mastery level that the organization is moving, right? You can take this at an organizational and go down all the way down to a departmental or an individual level as to how is the skill mastery changed over a period of time as that person's activity is demonstrating. There is a possibility that their activity is high, he's done 50 hours of learning, but the person has been spending all his time trying to do basic courses, right? Mastery level hasn't gone up, is at that level. So fundamentally what that means to the organization is that his ability is to do potentially the kind of work that is reflecting in the skill level. We can't push him up, right? For the employee, when he looks for a new job, the talent matrix will tell him, oh, you know what, my skill gap is here. Either I change my learning behavior while I'm meeting the activity metrics, and then I will move to the mastery level, right? And he looks at the mastery and then he says, I'll move up from a conversant to an intermediate to an advanced level learner. So the platform hence should be able to provide that content so that there is no content confusion. So you don't want people to be landed up with 200 courses. You want them to be said, this is your path and this is the collection that takes you to that mastery. So that's the learning metric simply, which is activity to a skill mastery driven and the skill driven learning metrics that is coming up very strongly now. Now on the impact side, now this I have seen a wide variation. A set of people say learning is so integral, I don't think I want to measure anything. It's perfectly okay, right? That's one side that we hear. On the other side, CFOs demand that the money that you're spending, tell me what impact have you created. Now you've seen multiple areas around this. Engagement is predominantly one of the biggest area that most companies pick up, right? Has the engagement gone up from the time we launched a particular training program? 20% increase in engagement is considered a good increase in engagement, right? So that's one, employee engagement is one area, especially at a time when remote work is increasing. You want to increase employee engagement through various ways, and learning is one of the important elements to do that. The second part is around business impact, right? Which is where the skill-based, role-based learning are in the context of the industry that you operate in or the customers that you serve in. Have you been able to impact your net promoter score? Have you been able to impact other business metrics? Have those improved as a result of the skill-based learning that you've done? If the skills have gone up, ideally, the outcome metrics of the other businesses should have a direct correlation. So people then measure saying, okay, as a result of a CX program that I ran for my sales teams, I have seen my sales engagement conversions go up. I have seen my customer service and net promoter score go up. So those are the other direct linkages to metrics that people tend to do. A more advanced one, which I've seen recently with one of our customers, this is PricewaterhouseCoopers, and they published this recently, is that they went to the extent of saying, okay, if you have learned something, and especially in a technology and professional services business that they are in, they asked their employees to say that if you've learned something new, are you able to create an asset that you could go and impact the work that you do or the project that they do? And they developed, in a period of about a year and a half, about 600 plus assets got developed that came out of the learning that people did, which then went back to the projects or the customer projects that they're doing, which led to reduction in time in which the projects got done, which led to better customer experience, and in some cases, lower time effort and hence more profitability, right? So that's I would think is probably a more advanced level of a business impact. But if you see here, it really is a wide variety. It is, you have to then curate it. In our work, what we try to do is that we have a customer success team works with every customer. We look at the maturity of where that customer stands, and then we put up a roadmap that allows them to go through this maturity from activity all the way to a direct business impact. So that's the way we see this going forward. The digital platforms, by virtue of the fact that nothing is hidden, everything is out there, your activity, your movement, whether you have skipped a video, whether you have skipped an assessment, whether you left a screen, went to cheat with a browser, you search on Google to get an answer, it's all there. Right? So your footprints are out there, so measurements are always there.
Absolutely, and I think customer metrics becomes the ultimate, go-to to assess how, customers have really utilized the value of their learning methodologies as well. Great insights. I would really thank this panel for taking time out and joining us for this discussion. Thank you all so much for joining us at ET Studios. Thank you.
Thank you, Shantari, for a wonderful discussion and my wonderful panel as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.